Wednesday, January 21st. I'm Ginny Farber, Chair of Board of Water and Sewer, and I'm calling this meeting to order at 1 p.m. We're meeting in a hybrid format over Zoom and are live streamed on channel 1072. This meeting is being recorded, and I will take attendance. Mark Burson.
Mark Burson, present.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon. Tim Brady.
Present.
Okay. Tim Coonahan.
Present.
Jeannie Farber, that's me. John Meyer is not here. Kevin Mahoney.
Here.
Mary Wright. Lynn Bruno.
I'm here.
And Dan Meany.
Here.
And it looks like, let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That Dan, you'll be voting today, okay? Also, we have Sue Brown from the Water Department, Rich Waldo from DPW, we have Dan Sullivan-Zenos from Veolia, we have Elaine Baird from the Finance Department, and John Nelson, our sewer
Finance Committee, not Finance Department.
Finance Committee, and John Nelson from the Board of Health, our water.
Our Health Department.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. All votes will be by roll call. Our first order of business today is additional allocated flow for 4 Nauset Farms Way. We have an applicant online, I believe, and Sue, do you want to talk to us about this?
Yes, sir.
Hi,
Hello.
are you talking?
Which
You're
Sue?
talking. Which Sue?
Which Sue? Sue Brown.
I'm just going to give a brief overview. So 4 Nauset Farms Way is in Phase 2 sewer. They have not been issued a betterment yet. Yes, yet they are requesting additional allocated flow for 4 Nauset Farms Way for the addition of a 2-bedroom ADU. I did give you a copy of the site plan indicating that. I cannot calculate what the additional allocated flow or the compensatory fee will be because we don't have a formula for the Phase 2 betterment as of yet.
So can we approve an unknown amount of allocated flow, or should we wait until we have that information?
I think their building permit is currently being held up because of this, which is why they were moving forward. So I don't know how you want to handle that, not knowing what the amount is, whether we do an approval and then we send the bill out as soon as I can.
But we don't even know what the amount of flow.
I know what the flow, I know what
Do
the
know what the
additional
flow
flow
is.
is going to
Okay.
be. So the additional allocated flow for 2 bedrooms would be 220 gallons per day, Title V. At 60% for sewer would be 132 gallons per day additional allocated flow.
Rich, you look like you wanted to say something.
I'm just here to answer questions. I think what we don't know is we don't know what the sewer unit's going to be for Phase 2, and we don't know what the per unit charge for each sewer unit is. We had talked to the property owner about this. They understand the unknown. We kind of gave them a little insight of what Phase 1 is, with the understanding that Phase 2 could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less in terms of charge. And I think at the end of the day, they're looking for the additional gallons so they can move forward with the construction of the ADU. What we will do is once the initial betterment is assessed, so they'll be assessed a betterment based on their flow, and then they'll be hit on top of that with their compensatory privilege fee, which is what you're going to approve today. So we'll mark this down. Once we issue our notice to connect and we go through the betterment process, they'll be issued 2 bills. One would be the betterment, the other will be the compensatory privilege fee. Both are available to be amortized over 30 years, and we will work with the property owner on that. So as Sue mentioned, they're looking forward to move forward with construction, but they can't until they can identify that they have the flow capacity at the water sewer board level. This is one of those tricky times that are tricky for us because we're in between phases. We're just about to complete construction. We're about a month away from issuing a notice to connect, but then we're about 6 months away from issuing a betterment when the final project cost is. So I'm fine with this. I mean, considering what the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners are going to approve is the gallonage that Sue just mentioned, which was the 135. That's what's going to be recorded, is that approval for the additional flow. And we'll follow up after the fact if this is approved.
Okay. Any questions from the commission?
I would move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call?
I, Tim Coonahan.
Dan Meany.
I'm Mary Wright.
By Ginny Farber,
Kevin Mahoney.
Tim Brady,
Aye, Tim Brady.
and Mark Burson.
Mark Person, aye.
Okay, that's 700. Thank you for coming in. Congratulations. All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Okay, moving on. The second item of business is a discussion of the watershed management plan. We had originally voted last month to have a public hearing today, and then I realized that our legal counsel had been silent on some language that I had given them and asked them to go back and look at it. They have given it to us. It's section 4 on page 4 of the land management plan that's in your packet. But there were margin notes on that, the language that says that if we wanted to change the language in section A and in section C, both would require DEP approval. And my opinion is that the language is maybe clarifying or more articulate, or the issues are more articulated in the new language, but that it's very similar to the language that was originally in the land management plan, and I would just as soon not go through the DEP process at this point. I don't know how other people feel.
Madam Chair, I think the conversation is also around that we have talked about looking at that entire plan as a forest management plan or any one of a number of things that Mark Reel has talked about and Mark Burson has talked about. And it seems to me if we're going to be doing that kind of next review, that anything that would, then some of that might require DEP approval. To sort of open up that twice seems unnecessary. And that really the wording that we were looking for was more clarification, not necessarily a change in policy. So as long as we're not changing anything, I would say we should approve it as it is, and, you know.
In the
in the original, and then at some point, as we look at it, you know, longer term, we can determine the need to go back to DEP.
Tim, this was your language. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm okay pushing this off until we do a broader assessment of the land management plan. I mean, I was just concerned that I was out there wandering around without
Legally.
illegally, and I was going to get arrested by Sue or whoever. But I think it sounds like it's informally allowable, and I think people will continue to use it informally, and at some point we should correct the language, but I don't think there's any urgency.
Right. Anyone else? Yes.
So it's just curious as to why it was just the change to A on page 4 that would trigger
And not any changes to page 3 or page 5?
Because it was Zone 1.
Because
It's Zone 1 language. So DEP has
it's the only what kind of language?
Zone 1.
Oh, I see. Okay, specific to Zone 1. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Anyone else?
Understood.
So, can we go back and then re-verify that the land management plan that will go to public hearing is the one we approved as, from last month?
I would recommend that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote on that. So we are going to reapprove the land management plan as submitted last month without this new language.
Move to approve that.
Okay, second?
It did have some change to the language, though.
We had,
Minor, it was to DEP's, it came directly from DEP's language for Zone 1. There was a change, but it wasn't this change.
you're right, it
I had made it
it-
the definition of DEP Zone 1.
You're right, but it is the language that we approved
Yes.
in the last meeting. So that stands now as what I would like to just ratify, we're okay with, and then we'll take a motion to send that to public hearing, back to public hearing.
Against,
We have the vote, we have a
Motion.
Motion.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
I, Tim Coonahan.
Dan Meany.
I'm Mary Wright.
Ginny Farber.
Kevin Mahoney.
Hi, Tim Brady.
And
And Mark Person.
thank you. And could I get a motion to send this to a public hearing? It would be February 18th at 1 o'clock in this room.
So moved.
Thank you. Could I get a second? Okay. All those in favor?
I, Tim Coonahan.
Hi, Dan Meany.
I'm Mary Wright.
Hi, Ginny Farber.
Kevin Mahoney.
Hi, Tim Brady.
And Mark Burson.
I'm Mark Person.
700. Thank you. Our next order of business is a solar project update by Mark Reel, who is on Zoom, and the contractor from Revision Energy, who is Christopher
We got,
Robinson.
hey, how are you? Yeah,
Good.
Christopher and Bradley Airy has to be let in as well.
Okay, great.
Sorry I can't be with you. I'm on the tail end of recovering from an illness, so best to not be with all of you.
Great, thank you. Mark, do you want to lead this off?
Sure, I just want to say, as a reminder to folks, in, I think it was May, yes, it was May of 2025, town meeting approved up to $5 million to develop 3 different locations for solar photovoltaic development, one being DPW, the other being the water treatment plant, and the other being the wastewater treatment facility. We went through a procurement process. We've brought Revision Energy on board to begin the development of those 3 sites. We needed to meet certain deadlines in order to access the expiring federal benefits, federal incentives that I believe are now expired at this point, but we've met the requirements there. And so the chair had asked that we come before you and just present a bit about what impacts there may be to the water treatment plant property, considering the land is protected. And here we are. We've come before you, and I will turn it over to Bradley and Chris.
Okay, great, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Happy to be here, everybody. I apologize. I'm working through a bit of a chest cold, so I hope I can get through this without too much of a struggle. I did, with respect for time, I don't know how much time we have allotted here, but I did put together just kind of a quick PowerPoint. I think first and foremost, we're beyond excited to continue working with you folks on developing these projects. And I'm interested, as we're in early sort of planning stages here, just so everyone's aware, we appreciate the speed to contract last year as we were working to secure the ITC for these projects. We are still at early stages, have not involved sort of civil engineering or gone through permitting. Traditionally, we're working on interconnection as sort of a first step. So we're pretty early stages. I'll share a quick PowerPoint, give you a quick overview of sort of where we are. And I'd just like to welcome your feedback and understand some of your objectives a little better. So with that, I'll share quickly.
Okay.
I've focused this presentation largely on the water treatment plant through some conversations. Can everyone see my screen?
No, not yet.
No. How about now? We good now?
Not yet.
Not yet. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, our interest is mostly in the watershed because that is because we are the body that is charged with protecting
Yep.
that land. So, yeah.
So this is the focus of what I want to talk to you about today. Some of the information may be irrelevant, but I hope that it's mostly pertains to this group. And some of this also applies a little bit to what we're looking at on the wastewater treatment facility. At a high level overview about the project, it's a large ground mount array, about 456 kW DC, 400 AC. Produces a whole lot of energy, 642,000 kilowatt hours. Some brief assumptions. This information can be accessed and referenced in our original sort of proposal and RFP. It includes tree removal in this space, as well as good amount of fencing, agricultural fencing in the area. Dive a little bit into sort of the system layout. As I understand, there was some questions about how much tree clearing is going to occur in this area, sort of what's our plan and our strategy around prepping the site. I know it's kind of a busy slide right here, but these blue areas that you can see is where the array is. Within that area, we would be stumping, grinding, and grubbing that area down to the ground. In the green area, this area would be cleared for shading purposes, so not as intensive in terms of disturbing the site as within sort of the blue boundaries. But that gives you a bit of the lay of the land. You can see the wastewater treatment plant here, as well as some of the adjacent wells.
This is the water treatment plant?
This is the water treatment plant.
Okay.
There is an access road that already exists in between this site. And again, we did try to design this in a way that would minimally disturb the area. It's near and dear to our hearts, conservation, we hate cutting trees down, but this solar system does provide a whole lot of carbon offset. So in terms of the lot clearing details, there's 2 acres, which I showed in that sort of blue boundary area. That would be for tree clearing, stumping, and grubbing. A little under 2.5 acres for tree clearing of sort of the shaded area. Within the entire site, we have about 4.5 acres of conservation mix seeding and straw covering that we would remediate the site with. There's about a little over 1,500 linear feet of this agricultural fence. Different options here, but we usually include these types of fencing when projects require DEP or DS approval and they mandate wildlife type fencing. These ground mounts would be secured to the earth with earth screws. There's about 763 of those. In terms of just general carbon offset, this is really high level data, but it offsets around 160 to 184 metric tons of CO2 annually. And the carbon impact of tree clearing is recovered roughly after about 3.5 years with net carbon reductions for the life of the solar array. In terms of remediation, I know that during early stages, there was questions about what sort of seeds would be planted here, what's the sort of remediation plan. I took this from a similar project that we had done. There's a conservation seed mix. We typically use Ernest seeds. They're kind of our go-to in the Northeast. And again, it includes reseeding the entire distributed area. And this sort of conservation seed mix can be customized. In terms of native pollinator plantings, I know this question did come up. There are sort of establishment challenges with native pollinators. The seed costs are relatively low to include these, but the effective establishment requires intensive site prep, active management for 1 to 3 year period to prevent competition from existing vegetation. Native pollinators currently not included in our scope due to some of the added effort, the costs, sort of some of the long-term management required for successful establishment. However, again, we are at early stages here. We have not engaged sort of civil, but this approach can be customizable. There's different sort of seed mix that we could incorporate with different ratios. Could incorporate we could incorporate sort of native flowers. And we could also incorporate sort of native pollinators. There's different strategies. You have to think about a lot of vegetation growing close to these panels. Sometimes native pollinators can take up to 3 years. They can be about 4 feet tall, and they can obstruct some of these panels. In some instances, we've installed a lot of ground mounts throughout the Northeast. We have put native pollinators in. Sometimes we've installed these or implemented these around the boundaries of the system. It can be kind of a happy medium in terms of management. But just to be known within sort of the budget and what's included in our proposal and our contract, if we wanted to look at native pollinators, how this could be incorporated, it would require, some coordination on, who would be responsible for maintenance. Would we want to involve maybe a specialist landscaper? And it may incur some increased costs. So just want to know that if this is a sticking point, happy to kind of continue to work with you folks on a solution that makes the most sense for this site. And if you have other sort of use cases where you've done things that you'd like to see done again, I'd be happy to hear more about that.
Well,
In terms of
wait, just hang on. So,
Yes.
two things. One, was this near and dear, so to speak, to a particular individual, or, the desire to have the native plantings? Did someone ask that we consider that? And
It's a select board policy that
It
all plantings be native.
Town policy.
Yeah, it was asked during contract negotiations, and we said, what we included in our scope is like, we have a conservation seed mix. This is kind of typically what it entails. If you wanted to look at pollinators, we could kind of look at that after contract, and we could amend it to work with you folks on the best sort of solution.
okay, so that just gets kicked down the road a bit, and we'll be dealt with that.
Yeah, again,
Okay,
it's not
I'm good.
wasn't included in our scope or our contract, but again, we've done a lot of this. The question comes up a lot, and I think that there's just a lot to be said about what it really means to establish those and to have it bear fruit to flower, essentially.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to spend more time on it. I was just curious if it was
Yep.
requested from someone. And then the second is, sorry to ask, but what kind of timing are you planning here with your presentation? Is it 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes?
I have one more slide.
Oh,
and
okay.
That's it. Yep.
There.
In terms of like overall environmental risks and sort of resource protection in this spot, I think, solar systems they're passive systems. There's no fuels, chemicals, wastewater, no, routine discharges. All the equipment that we use is sealed, inverters, solar panels, they're solid state devices. In terms of stormwater runoff, the sites are, they're all maintained to use natural drainage, using vegetation, erosion control, groundwater protection. There's no operational fluids or chemical inputs that could impact the soil or groundwater quality. it complies with regulatory compliance in terms of maintenance. There's no routine use of fertilizers or pesticides or hazardous materials. And a lot of these systems are built within sort of critical infrastructure, including water facilities. So again, a lot work still to be done in terms of permitting, but I just wanted to sort of lay this out for you folks. Again, I'd kind of open it up to any questions. If I might not have all the answers today, but any feedback that you have for me, welcome to bring that back to my team and provide you any more answers if need be.
What is the timing? You mentioned that this requires DEP approval. What's the timing for that, and is there any risk in that?
I'm also joined today by Christopher Robinson. I don't think he was let in as a presenter, but he is our developer on the project. I think in terms of a construction timeline, we're still pretty far out. Again, we work in earnest on interconnection. First and foremost, I don't have the best sense in terms of a permitting timeline for you, but I could get you that information.
No, I don't need it. I was just curious when that takes place in this process, and then is there any risk that they object?
This is Chris Robinson here. I'm not sure if you can hear me now.
Yes.
Hopefully you can. So just like what Brad was saying, our first step in terms of kind of any permitting is with interconnection first. What interconnection is that's reaching out to the utility, basically providing this plan, and then just basically making sure that we have the green light for anything that we're going to be feeding back into the grid is approved by the grid. And that's kind of our first step kind of across the board. That process can take anywhere from 6 to 8 months, just depending on really if the utility wants to do any studies or anything like that. That, in my opinion, is always kind of the first and the best way to go ahead with any projects of these size. We would hope to be getting this actually, again, we get our approval from the utility, then we begin kind of diving more into the permitting process with Mass DEP for approval. That would probably take another 3 or 4 months. So ideally, we're going to be getting this in kind of close to late Q3, early Q4 of 2026. But of course, that just depends on how much or how little resistance there is from the utility. That, to me, is kind of the crucial part of this project.
Could I ask how much of the treatment plant's electric usage are you covering with this project? Does it supply all the electricity for the treatment plant? And if it has overages, are we on net metering such that it can go back to other parts of the town, or?
This system is being set up ideally as a behind the meter project. So you're correct. Basically, if it's being set up as a behind the meter project, then any additional credits would be net meter. But that actually happens kind of more. It makes a bit more sense if you're looking at this kind of on like a day-to-day setup, because like in the winter months when you're not producing as much, you're really going to be kind of working on a deficit where you're not making enough to really spin the grid backwards, and you're just doing kind of some percentage of the water treatment plant. I believe kind of in one of the slides that Brad had showed up that we'd be producing about 730,000 kilowatt hours. Unfortunately, right in front of me, I don't have the amount of kilowatt hours that the water treatment plant is consuming currently, but I would imagine we're probably still not going to be creating much in excess. If we do, you're exactly right. We can, there's a document that's called the Schedule Z, and we can redirect those net metering credits to wherever there is a need for the town. Because there's 3 of these projects that we have set up for, we would probably stay within kind of that scope and kind of those 3 buildings, just to make sure we can kind of get to as close as we can to like a net zero. But if there's any particular buildings that the town would prefer, we're happy to have that conversation.
It was,
I'm assuming it was designed to get to a net, as close to net zero as possible.
my understanding was that it had to be net zero in order to get DEP approval, because the array could only be permitted if it provided
Water.
Yeah, let me. I can speak to
water-related
that.
activities, yeah.
I can speak
Hi,
to
Mark.
that. Hi there. So in our conversations, we actually had to go to the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs regarding Article 97 issues. It's not necessarily DEP. And the conversation was, does this use of the property by installing the solar fit within Article 97 so that it's not triggered as a change of use, right? And they said that as long as the energy facility was providing electricity for the current intended use, which is production of drinking water, then it would not trigger Article 97. And so the electricity that's generated, the design of this, when we received the response from Revision, showed that it was designed to produce 100% of the water facility's electricity. And then if you think about the other electricity accounts that exist that aren't necessarily the water treatment facility, but maybe the well pumps, et cetera, we could allocate any excess to those as well. So as we're designed, it is intended to provide 100% of the electricity for the treatment facility.
Okay, thank you. Rich?
Only if the board doesn't have any questions.
We're always fascinated to hear.
Bradley, Christopher, thank you very much. Rich Waldo, I'm the Director of Public Works. Obviously, I'm more concerned about the tie-in of this array to the existing infrastructure, given the sensitive nature of water production for the town. Can you tell me just some of the safeguards that are going to be in place? And I'm not even sure you're that far along in the design yet, but if we need to shut down the array, that we'll be able to have basically a kill switch that would be able to shut that down. And then do we have any mechanism to prevent any kind of surcharge or any issues from affecting our treatment plant during the process? So I'm just kind of wondering if you guys are thinking about how that feeds into our treatment plant, because I assume this is going to be tied into our treatment plant and then tied into the grid. It's not going to be a separate tie into the grid. So just looking to get educated on that part of things, just to make sure that our treatment plant's going to be safe.
You're absolutely correct. So it is behind. Oh, sorry, I can dive into that.
I was going to say, Chris, if you want to take that, that's great.
Yeah, so for a behind the meter setup, you're exactly right. We plan on making our interconnection into the water treatment plant. So basically, we're going to be behind the meter for that facility. However, there's an automatic transfer switch that is used for a generator. So we're going to be in front of that, basically, so we're not running into an issue of basically backfeeding that generator. In terms of disconnects, there's multiple shutdown points for an array, certainly for a ground mount array like this. The one that's probably the most crucial in terms of shutting down the system in an emergency event, that will be located on the actual water treatment plant facility, basically where our tie-in is, and that basically that's required by also the utility, and close to the what we're going to have is the smart meter, or basically a rebate meter that's included in the process. That single disconnect would throw off the entire system. And that's basically one of probably 3 different setups that are going to be there. There's one that's at the building, one that's going to be located kind of in closer to the field itself, as well as a combiner panel, which is just like in your house when you have multiple circuits that are feeding kind of different sources. In our case, it's going to be that multiple circuits are going to be feeding the different solar inverters, and those will each individually shut off. So if you basically are working on one section versus the other, you can shut down half of the array in terms of if we were doing any maintenance or anything like that. Yeah, but in terms of like that is where currently how we're expecting to basically backfeed into the system. And if there's any excess in that, again, like kind of when you're looking at it daily, it would basically flow through the existing setup, hit the existing meter, spin that meter backwards, go out to the transformer, and then out to wherever there's a demand, which would be basically like the next facility that's on the feeder towards that area. Yeah, so again, that's kind of very focused kind of on the interconnection question. And then in terms of was the other question just basically in terms of like construction?
Well, I think I think he answered most of the questions. I think the other one was just backfeed of surges, or if we have peak demand for our system that kicks on, do you envision any interruption in power flow,
No.
either off the grid or from the solar array itself?
No, I don't expect anything like that. If there are any surges, basically, if there are any surges that are not expected, the system is basically limits itself. So for a system this size, the inverters are smart enough. So basically, like if for some reason they were going to get kind of like, full sunlight, direct sun, it is capped. It's not going to cause any variability. And there's also the way it's tied into, and this is just kind of how solar works inherently. But when you're tied into any grid system, it's doing its best to kind of mirror basically the voltage frequency that you have like in that section. So this is like a little bit behind the scenes, but like not every spot in the grid is created equal. In some areas, the voltage is a little bit higher, voltage a little bit lower, the frequency kind of shifts a bit. What the solar inverter is doing, which is kind of the brains behind the entire thing, it is trying to match that existing frequency so that we don't see any blips, we don't see any issues related to the solar that would basically causing interruptions. And also that's the other item, is that in terms of if we are in front of the automatic transfer switch, basically, if the power goes down, most likely how it's set currently is that your automatic transfer switch is switching everything over to a generator. So if power goes down, the solar goes down with it. It is not like a battery backup separate. It is designed like that because basically you want to have a spot to put this excess energy, which would be the grid itself. It's designed in such a way so that that basically prevents any sort of a backfeed issue because you're kind of using the grid as kind of your energy dump for all that excess energy. Hopefully
I think you explained it
answered
very
more
well.
question that I created.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Are you anticipating any training with our local fire department so they will understand if they need to shut down the array for whatever reasons, sparking reasons, if there's a fire or something of that sort, that they're going to be able to manually shut down that array?
Absolutely. Usually we don't go for kind of full training, but we're happy to do so at request. Usually it's more we're kind of working with fire departments from the very beginning just to make sure what we're doing is kind of within their scope and with their approval. Certainly if they have any specific questions, we're happy to give kind of training to any technicians that are happen to be on site that are working at the water treatment plant kind of 24/7, but certainly any fire department as well, just to answer and discuss any and all questions. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think the last question, you talked a little bit about the seed mix. What do you anticipate for maintenance inside the fence area? Is this going to be something we need to keep an eye on in height-wise, that to not obstruct the arrays? Are we expecting the seed mix to just be a ground level seed mix that's not going to grow in height, where once we close up the fence area, it's shut down and we don't have to maintain it? What's your expectation for that?
So again, I think that has a little bit to do with kind of what we ultimately decide is going to be appropriate to grow there. I mean, for starters, we're definitely zero chemical vegetation management. We're not going to be putting kind of any chemicals in here. So if there is going to be any management, it will be basically a maintenance crew growing in there and physically cutting down anything that is there. If we're looking at some of kind of the native pollinators, the concern is that sometimes that height may get up to 4+ feet, and if that's the case, then that's where we'd have to come in after the fact to basically effectively mow that down to get it to be a bit more manageable. If not, and we can use kind of something different than native pollinator dependent, then that could be more kind of a sealed setup, and that is basically there'd still be some maintenance, but it would just be spread out a bit further instead of having it 3 or 4 times annually. It could be a single time annually, maybe biannually, depending on what we actually are permitted to actually grow there.
Can I jump in there? So fescue, clover, low bush blueberry,
All low-lying.
once a year,
Yeah, okay.
okay?
Oh,
Yeah.
let's do that.
Will any of the construction occur within Zone 1?
Yes.
Well, it is.
So within 200 feet of the,
Yes, so yes.
It looks like it's going to be in the zone 1 of 4.
I have a
What?
question,
Water
if I may.
Mark,
Four.
it's water related, so BP. Yes, Mark.
Okay, we received the monthly report, operating report. So I did get a chance to look at the budget, and obviously there is a item for electricity. It's budgeted for $315,000, and we actually utilized almost 124,000. So my question is, during this process, is there any metrics, either statistical or business, being generated as to what savings this will result in to the taxpayers of Orleans, and especially whether or not there's any metrics which address the increased cost of electricity, which seems to be an issue for most folks in who live anywhere. But and I'm concerned whether or not, when this goes forward and the funding is needed, that those numbers be pretty readily available, so that the argument can be made, especially at town meeting or in any committees that may have jurisdiction over this, know what the essentially cash in your pocket net result of all this. And this is a project which has a life of what, 20 years or more?
More, yeah.
So, and I don't know if you've addressed that, or you will address that, or how it will be addressed. But in order of just simply selling it to the people, it would be really, I think, something that we should have readily available and make part of the public domain, so that people understand that not only is this hopefully a good thing environmentally, but it has a direct impact on what the town will be paying for its electric bills for a long time. Because every time one of these things comes up, and the only thing that comes to mind recently is the electrical code, and somebody got up and said, well, it's going to add $30,000 to the building of a house. So that went
Mark,
that down.
Mark Reel has his hand up, and he looks enthusiastic about answering your question. Good question.
Well, I just want to answer Mark's question about, having to sell this to the public. We've already done that. We've got this funding. It's approved. We've moved past that point. The cost, the return on investment, I believe, and maybe Bradley can help me. Did we have a 5 or 6 year out of the 25 years? Is that what it was?
I think that's a conservative estimate. I don't know in our RFP response if
maybe my analysis after with Adam showed.
Yeah, I think some of that stuff was done. I also think that some of the exact size the systems are maybe changing just slightly from what was proposed. So, but I think overall these projects have really strong financials, and
right.
And they're also using some pretty conservative estimates on the rising increase of electricity. And if you look at some of the independent third-party, ISO predictions in the rate of electricity, there's predictions that we're going to be seeing a 75% increase in cost of electricity over the next 5 or 10 years. And we're not modeling that in some of these scenarios. So again, I know Mark and Adam had done some previous analysis, and this was, looked at as a very positive project. But I think across the board, we we view solar, especially when you get economies of scale in some of these large systems, especially when you're purchasing it and you're not going to use a lease or a PPA. Fundamentals are hard to argue against.
I think that Mark, Commissioner Burson's question gets to having that information reported out on a regular basis so that it's in the public domain.
Yeah, of course, and and to Commissioner Burson's points about what's budgeted in the electricity line, we expect to see significant, if not, well, there will be significant reductions in your electricity needs, and therefore your electricity line item would be reduced, and those funds could be allocated in other places that are needed. And this goes for the DPW facility as well, right? So these projects are intended to be both environmentally impactful as well as fiscally.
Thank you. I interrupted.
No, I had the same
I
question.
just have one more comment.
Okay.
I hope these models take AI and the generating cost of that in this discussion, because that demand might blow everybody out of the water. So when you say you're using conservative approaches, maybe a second look at something other than conservative, or maybe a more middle ground might be warranted. And I really think that this stuff has got to be on the town's website in a real-time kind of way, that we're moving along with this, and this is what we expect, and hopefully to make it as transparent as possible. Okay, I'm
Thank you.
done.
Chris, did you
Thank
have
you.
your hand up to answer something? Okay.
Yeah, no, just one item that I can just discuss is that if the concern is kind of transparency and just saying, hey, is this thing actually producing what we thought it was going to produce? For a lot of different solar arrays, there are monitoring softwares that exist. Those monitoring softwares actually say, okay, here's exactly, they tell you a lot of great information. The things you really care about is kilowatt hours, because that's what, we're all consuming is in kilowatt hours. And so for other projects that we've done, kind of, for local schools, we've kind of set it up either just to have it kind of as a, again, I'm thinking kind of more in like a school aspect where we've set up a kind of monitor at the entrance of the school, something like that. Have you do something similar in town hall, or just have it kind of a more of a public link, if that's something that you'd want people to kind of have access to 24/7. If not, again, we don't need to do that, but here that was kind of a potential option that happy to bring up if we want to dive into that further, just as we move forward with the project.
Thank you.
I think the point Mark was making was suggesting that we promote this via the town website or otherwise as things that folks in town are doing to save costs. Isn't that right, Mark?
And
That's
show that
right.
it's working.
That's, I think, was his point.
Mark Rail?
Yes, just want to say I've just sent a message to Amanda Converse, and we are going to create a web page for this project, because I think you're right. We need to make sure folks are aware of where we are in this process and share the information.
Yeah, it'll give people something else to watch besides 1072.
There you go.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Because I was not going to say anything till you had a chance. I'm also, besides Chair of Water and Sewer, I'm also a Conservation Commissioner, so this is where I'm coming from. So the Board of Water and Sewer has jurisdiction over what happens in the watershed. We understand that this is a water-related project, but I have concerns about the environmental impact and the loss of mature trees that do carbon sequester and that take longer than 3 years to regenerate. And I'm concerned about wildlife habitat. So I have talked to Mark Reel about this before, but beyond having pollinators, natives, or whatever established within the fencing, I would like to see some mitigation in the form of, and this is probably a town issue more than a contractor issue. I would like to see some mitigation offered, for instance, to replant the acreage that was stripped a couple of years ago for the wind array that never got built. I would also like, again, to you, Mark, Rio, start to look at a forestry plan, separate from, but motivated by this project, where we start to look at reforesting some of our areas, and also making sure that we have, what's the word I want, not sequestration, that we have a plan for growth, tiered growth.
Oh, yes, diverse age,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the word. So that's, I mean, I really taking down 5 acres of trees just is stunning to me. But if we could work to get established ground cover that actually has some value, then and then work with Mark on forestry, that would be great. But my
Sounds good.
ask to the town is that we revegetate that area right behind the water department.
I guess the question I have on vegetating versus creating a fire hazard. I mean, what are the trade-offs? And I'm not an expert on either. I absolutely agree and understand the idea of wanting to reforest, but then there's also the potential concern about
Fuel?
vegetation and creating a fuel hazard, so. But
You know,
it's not necessarily part of this discussion, so maybe we put it on a
Yeah,
future
put it
agenda.
on
this has
land
to-
management.
This has to do with the whole, looking at that, what the
Land.
plan is, but
Yeah.
those are good
That's
points.
a broader,
Yep, absolutely.
broader conversation. So is there anything else that we want to talk?
The only other question I would have about the fenced-in area, I have solar on the roof at my house, and when it was put up, they put critter guards underneath, and this is, so, on a different scale altogether, a 7-foot fence, but how deep does it get buried to keep the little guys? And of course, it'd only be the little boy animals that would do this, little girls wouldn't do it, from climbing under, but getting into the array, is there history from other towns and so on where the clever animals actually do get into the fenced-in arrays somehow and create havoc? And how, are there meant to be cameras on the arrays to watch for that sort of stuff? Or is it just visual? Will the water department be trained to be watching for the invasion of the rabbits or something? Help us out with that.
I think, Chris, you could probably take a piece of this, but what I would say is that these systems are capable of remote monitoring. They should be maintained regularly, where a lot of this sort of animals getting in and causing problems with wiring, I mean, has been known to happen at times. And I think just having appropriate maintenance and keeping an eye out on any alerts of the system is definitely important. I don't know, Chris, we talked about this earlier. I don't think we decided on a specific fence design, but could you speak to sort of keeping animals out, allowing them to pass through? What do you usually see?
Yeah, no, it's like exactly that. We kind of see a mix. Usually kind of with general fencing, like kind of we've discussed, usually that is more than enough. for any sort of an issue. For your, like a residential house, like you're mentioning, where you have kind of that critter guard, usually that's because there's already a lot of trees that are overgrown kind of in that area around a residential home, and squirrels are already there, and that is what that critter guard is really
I
meant
have
to
clever
prevent.
raccoons that like my roof, and they go up and
Yeah.
over for the bird feeders on the other side, so go ahead.
Yeah. So no, active raccoon or active squirrel are exactly that. They like to kind of get into those nice areas because they're
Nesting,
already
yeah.
yeah, exactly. You don't see as much nesting on a larger ground mount, particularly because we are doing this clearing, kind of to keep everything kind of like out from this area. If for some reason, usually we wouldn't do both, but in some instances where it isn't required that we kind of put a fence around that specific area because it's kind of more secluded. Sometimes we will put some, you can put some screening or some backing behind the array itself. So basically, if you were to reach up, we're kind of where all the wires are in the solar array, all that is blocked off. That isn't really as meant as much for squirrels as for people. You just don't want people to kind of be able to reach up and kind of touch electrical wires. But that's where the fence kind of would come in to kind of supersede that.
But you would never use rodenticides, right?
No, he said no
I don't know what those
chemicals,
are,
no.
so
Yeah.
Oh, chemicals that kill rodents.
They can't in the water district anyway.
I know.
No, no, no.
I'm just double checking.
no, we haven't. And usually anything that we use kind of for mitigation of that, it's just going to be by mechanical means, basically physically blocking it off and things like that. Sometimes, if you have, how is the deer population in Orleans? I don't know.
Robust.
Okay. So fair. If you have particularly aggressive that are like jumping over 7-foot fences, then we can try and like talk about some mitigation regarding that. And then I just suppose the only other kind of like animal incursion that is again like if we're really digging deep would be something with like seagulls and things like that, or some kind of like
Turkeys.
birds.
Turkeys, we have lots of
Yeah.
turkeys.
Remember, it's in
And
the
for
middle of
turkeys-
400 acres of
Fair,
protected land.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but hopefully that at least gets the ballpark of what we're talking about.
Okay. So, commissioners, anything else? Thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure we'll talk again.
As the
Thank you all.
project
Thank you all very much.
progresses, right.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye.
You too. So our next order of business is public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? Any public comment online, Peggy?
No hands raised.
Okay, great. So then, item 5, minutes, December 17th, 2025. Do we have any
Move to approve?
additions? Okay,
Second.
anything?
Yeah, I think, wasn't Marina also there at the meeting in December? She's not listed. And then on page 2, there's a typo, water liens, and the headline is spelled wrong.
Okay.
But those are small.
So with
Any
those de
typos?
minimis additions, we have a motion, we have a second, all those in favor?
I, Tim Cunahan?
Dan?
I'm Mary Wright.
Hi, Jenny Farber,
Kevin Mahoney?
Hi, Tim Brady.
and Mark.
I'm Mark Person.
Okay, 700. So, new business. Commitments, abatements, refunds. Sue?
We have before you sewer commitments totaling $35,393.70 for the month of December 2025.
Move to accept.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Tim?
I, Tim Cunahan?
I'm Mary Wright.
Hi, Jenny Farber.
Kevin Mahoney?
Hi, Tim Brady.
I'm Mark Person.
Okay, thank you, 700.
Commitments for water, December 2025 totaling $2,380.83.
So moved.
Could I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Tim?
I, Tim Cunahan?
I'm Mary Wright.
Jenny Farber?
Kevin Mahoney?
Hi, Tim Brady.
Mark?
I'm Mark Person.
Okay, thank you. That's 700. What else? Anything else, Sue, on that?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so our next is the annual town report. You want to take that?
It's actually past due at this point, but wanted you all to see it and make any changes you might want to make so I can submit it to the town administrator's office.
Unless there's something quick. Now, would you take email edits up until like Monday or Tuesday?
I'd like maybe if we could do it before the end of the week so I can submit it.
Okay, tomorrow or Friday? So, edit suggestions. Are there any questions right now?
Sue, I'll be sending you just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, this is actually a report that I'm supposed to write, but Sue does a better job.
I don't know about that.
And she has historically done it.
That's right. It's all good.
It's all good. Thank you. Okay, sewer department report, DPW wastewater update.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Rich Waldo, Director of Public Works, Natural Resources. Brief update today. So first thing first, most probably pressing for us is the completion of Phase 2, at least getting us to substantial completion. Last meeting, I mentioned to you that we were hopeful per contract to be done substantial completion by December 7th. We have been working with the contractor to get to a point where we can bring forward to this committee the acceptance of substantial completion. And so we are right now targeting potentially bringing it forward at your February 18th meeting. I'm cautiously optimistic that would make that one. But if not, I think what we might do is maybe request that a special meeting be held maybe the following week or just prior to the first Board of Health meeting in March.
That would be March 4th.
Yeah, so we're looking at that time frame. Contractor's still responding very well. Some things that are outside of our control, which is a wet well test that is performed by DEP, and we haven't just got any comments from them actually whether we need one or not. So there's the potential we actually might not need that wet well test, which would be good. We'll move things along. We did do harmonic testing. Everything passed well there. So system's operational. It's just these fine-tuned things that we want to ensure that we are happy with the results before we take the acceptance. So hopefully next meeting we'll have a good update for you. In terms of Phase 3, we're still working towards a solicitation of bids at the end of February, early March. We finally, after a couple of months, got comments back from Mass DOT. If you recall, a lot of the work in the Phase 3 area has to do on Route 28, so we need to get comments from DOT, and we also need those comments to go to our funding agency, SRF, who requires comments from the state highway before they will confirm our funding. So after a month, we finally got comments from them. We're starting to go through them. Nothing stood out to us as being real complicated or a real complication to the project, so we're hoping to be able to provide them with a response, make some modifications of plans as necessary, and keep us on track to be able to bid this project out at the end of February, March. We also received our notice of intent from the Conservation Commission, so we received that yesterday, so which is good. So Phase 3 is going very well. We're working forward, getting lots of comments in. It's just going to be a great project, another one. Moving on to our next meeting is my anticipation that we're going to bring forward to you the operating budget for fiscal year 27. So the last couple of months, we've been working internally developing a fiscal year 27 operating budget. We had submitted it to the town administration. We've been working through town administration, kind of going through just the development of that budget. And I believe it was released maybe last Thursday or Friday to FinCom, which is the first step. So now it's out in the public, so I want to get that before you guys. We have a better understanding of the debt. I think the picture of wastewater just overall looks better. Happy to get into that discussion with everyone here and just let you know what my thoughts are, and you guys can ask your thoughts. And, moving forward as we go through the fiscal year, we can work through what your expectations are for reporting, what you'd like to see, what you wouldn't like to see, and basically just be able to have more of that transparent conversation now that we're kind of starting to get in the swing of things, of starting to have flow come in from phase one. We're starting to have some projections for phase two and things looking forward. So just as a brief highlight for fiscal year 26, I will say that we've already exceeded our anticipated flow number for what we budgeted for fiscal year 26. So I think we estimated that we would bring in $110,000 in sewer revenue in fiscal year 26, and to date, we've already brought in $260,000. So there are some silver linings as we go through that budget process. We'll be able to present that to you, we'll talk about debt, talk about certain things like that. So I hope to do that next meeting. We'll do water as well, and we'll discuss what our capital budget looks like as well. You want me to go on, or you want to ask a question?
No, keep going. I have an end of.
Okay. So this morning, we had a kickoff meeting with our wastewater consultant to review and discuss a potential revision to the betterment assessment bylaw. As we all know, we've been through a gauntlet in the last 12 to 18 months with phase one betterment issuance, connecting a phase one. There's been a lot of discussions on the way that betterments are assessed. There's a lot of concerns about the appeal process that we went through. So we decided to hire a third-party independent consultant to help walk us through the betterment bylaw, make sure as we move forward with the other 16 phases of sewer that we're on the right course, and that if we need to make an adjustment, we make adjustments now and not late in the game. So I think we had a very good meeting. Members from FinCom were there, from this commission, as well as Wastewater Management Advisory from the Economic Development Committee. So we had stakes from everyone's input, working with the consultant, trying to get them off to the right foot. So that project has started. I'd probably say in another two months or so, 3 months, we'd be able to come back before this board as well as the others and start presenting our thoughts and our findings on how we handle some of those things that we learned in phase one and what we might be able to do differently in future phases. So
Is that modifications to the methodology, is that ultimately
we're going to look at the
select board, or is it this board?
ultimately, it's a select board. It's a select board, which would actually go to a town meeting vote if we needed to amend the assessment bylaw. That is something that is approved at town meeting, and it's approved by the Attorney General's office. So we're going to look at the methodology. We're going to look at water usage as a basis for determining betterment. We're going to talk about a little bit about the 80-20 split. As we know right now, for phase one and phase two, we have an 80-20 split.
This board has at least some input into that as to what they want
100%.
channel to this. Okay.
100%. It would really be based on a recommendation from this board to the select board, and the select board acting on it.
Thank you.
So that process started, and we'll keep you updated as it continues. And I think the last piece I have is that the phase two letters that we discussed the last couple of meetings, the letter that's going to come from the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners, mainly the chair, will be sent out this Friday. It's been modified based on feedback that we got last meeting, been adjusted. Thank you to the chair for working through that with other members. Letter looks good. Packages are being stuffed right now, so we're stuffing envelopes, got labels out, and as of Friday, that letter will be out. So people should start to get that next week, next Monday, and hopefully they'll start the process of them doing their work to connect to phase two. So with that, that's my update. Happy to answer any questions.
Two questions. One, I thought there was a betterment meeting tomorrow night.
No, that's Mill Pond.
It's Mill Pond
Oh,
study.
Mill Pond. Okay.
I'll tell you about that in a minute.
Okay. So I guess I missed the betterments meeting.
There hasn't been a betterments meeting. Look better.
There hasn't been a date scheduled. I know last community meeting, we talked that we're going to have a betterment meeting in the future. We're not there yet. But
Second,
that's still expected to be had.
yeah. Second question.
Sorry, what does that mean, a betterment meeting? Is that something in addition to what
A
we just?
community meeting.
It's a community meeting just to one, explain the methodology, what we're going through, what the preliminary numbers look like, what the sewer unit determination, and answer questions.
Okay, second question. In reading the town report, you said by the end of '25, Phase 1 hookups were at 81%, right? This is what, 2.5 years after orders to hook up? And I'm just curious as to what we're doing to get those people to hook up. What kind of fines we're imposing, what we're, and, because I mean, it sounds like the flow is there, but we clearly need to get this other 19% of people to hook up.
Well, I'm not sure what the calculation of that 81% is, but I'm pretty sure it includes vacant properties that won't be developed or anytime soon. So I think the expectation of making 100% may not be realistic, but I will say that, at least for a time being, I mean, at some point they will, but until they get developed, until someone builds something.
I guess I'd be interested in what percentage the ones that should be hooked up are hooked up, right? I mean,
But, sorry, isn't that 19%, isn't a majority of that, at least according to John, it's in process? I mean, it's not like there's just,
Some in process.
but we're
some-
2.5 years,
no, I know that, but I mean, I don't think, the 19%, I think, is a portion of that where John Nelson would say that, they're
They're very much in
not
process.
just
And they're-
ignoring.
I'm at a point where I don't really care if they're in process. They're 2.5 years into this process and they're not hooked up.
The board,
Very, very few that.
yeah, the Board of Health is holding people to their requirements to hook up. They're having monthly meetings, bi-monthly meetings, 2 times a month, where they're putting people that are not connected, they have to justify why they're not connected. John Nelson just stepped out. He probably would be able to give a better update as to where that is, but there are hearings that are ongoing right now with the Board of Health, and some of them have been given a little bit of a reprieve to connect. I can give you an example of two that may impact how the fire department might be served by sewer. One is 2 potential avenues where we could go, which would be going through a particular parcel. We've asked for that to be, given a stay of connection until we determine what the fire department design's going to look like, how they're going to be sewered. And so they're in a 6-month stay right now. So, all these parcels are being vetted by the Board of Health, and they're have their own determination of when that connection is going to be happening for a multitude of reasons, for whatever their issues are of why they can't connect. So I think that the Board of Health is doing an excellent job of vetting this process, and I think we've made some strides to get people connected.
Okay, I mean, so
One big one this last week. There was one big one that got hooked up this,
Yeah.
I think, last week.
yeah, I mean, it's the revenue that doesn't get collected from the sites that aren't hooked up gets passed on to the taxpayer. And I think we really have a fiscal responsibility to ensure that these people get hooked up. Now, if, 18% of the 19% are vacant lots and, then I'm good. But 20% after 2.5 years seems like a high number. And it just.
I think that number does reflect vacant properties, so we'll work to clarify that and maybe confirm what that.
I checked with John. He and I he's meeting with Meredith next week, and he's going to provide me with info.
Yeah.
So
And I will say, this board did make changes to the sewer use rules and regulations to ensure that those people are paying at least a basic service fee, where they're getting a bill every single quarter for the sewer system, even though they're not connected. So yes, do we want that flow? 100%. We sure are, and I know the Board of Health's working towards that. But to say that they're not paying anything, they are. They're paying a basic service fee. So every quarter they're getting a $50 bill. So $200 a year, they're paying something.
get, we'll put it on the agenda for our next time to get a thorough review on where we are, where we're going. Mark, I see you.
Okay, thank you. When you recited the stakeholders at the meeting, I didn't hear town council being mentioned, and my concern is this: if you come up with a methodology
Okay.
that is different from the methodology that you used in phase one, and I understand that each phase has a different methodology, but in terms of the methodology that was used and the people who appealed it, I think town attorney ought to be involved in at least having some input into whether or not the methodology as proposed is going to have any residual effect on the appeals that were taken, or whether or not it's going to lead to any further appeals from phase one. That's just the thought that crossed my mind when you listed the stakeholders at this meeting.
I appreciate that, Mark. I will say that Mike Solitro, who's our, from the town manager's office that works with our legal counsel, he was there at that meeting. So he did provide a lot of legal perspective at that meeting, and I expect that to continue as we move forward. But thank you.
Anything else?
Good luck.
Anything else, commissioners? Okay, great.
Thank you.
I have a brief wastewater management advisory committee update. Kevin could not be here today, but he specifically asked me to announce and invite all to a 5 o'clock meeting tomorrow night on the Mill Pond Alternatives Study, and it's alternatives to help clean up Mill Pond, sort of quick and dirty, in the short-term mitigations, such as the one we did in Lonnie's Pond, and alum in Crystal and Pilgrim Lake, thank you, ahead of sewering. So that meeting is tomorrow night, 5 o'clock, in the Nauset room. And now Deanne. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Just going to start with any questions on the November report, since I know I got that one out fairly late to you guys. It was after the meeting occurred, so I wanted to open it up for any questions on the November report.
Anybody? Okay.
Dan, there's, when you were on the flow treatment and flow precipitation and the weather, on the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th bullet point down, you said, well, actually,
Could you use your microphone, Dan? You're like 8 feet away from it.
There you go.
Thank you.
well, actually, it's the flows, the total gallons and the percentages are, oh, never mind.
Okay. So if that's it for November, I'll just dive right into December. You see on the front, there's a picture. We are up at the water tower. That is where the wicks are. That was just showing you guys, everyone says that the old saying, mailmen work, rain, snow, sleet, whatever, which we found to be not exactly true. My team is out there in the snow, in the rain. They are excellent. They're out there every day doing an excellent job. So that was just to kind of show that we're out there no matter what. And when I say we, I mean mostly the team.
Except for the late night calls.
Sometimes. Then what I would like to point out is the year-over-year the single chart, the bar chart. I kind of reformatted that so that you could see January 24 right next to January 25. I was going to kind of leave that if you guys prefer it like that, or did you want me to do, the previous year all in a row and then the current year, or, the month side by side per year? I wasn't sure what your preference was, so just wanted to give you another option there. And I think I kind of like this version better personally, but it's up to you guys what you like.
I found it confusing. I actually was looking at it, and I was trying to see a long-term trend, and then I realized that you'd interleaved the 2 years. And so in trying to understand the differences between March of one year versus March of the other year, it was tough to sort of see
I
what the shape
totally
of-
understand that. Like I said, I kind of wanted to leave it up to what the preference of the board was. This is kind of how I envisioned it when I first thought, like, okay, I'm going to create this because I wanted to show, because the question was year over year, how are we doing? That was a question I got from you guys a lot. So I really wanted to show you year over year, January 24 to this year, what is the difference in flows? But again, up to you guys what you prefer. So it sounds like I have one vote for the going back to the old way. Any other?
I don't have a preference.
Okay.
So if you do, speak up.
Another number I'd like to point out is our annual daily flow average, which is our permitted effluent flow. You'll see that we are roughly 45% as of December 31st, which is the full year. That number restarts in January. So come, next month for the report, you'll see that we'll probably be at 30% because of the seasonality. That percentage will go greatly higher during the summer, and then it'll start to come down as we get towards January 1st. So I just want to point out that for the year, we were at 45% of our permit average flow. Now, we haven't had anyone from phase 2 hook up, but if you were to plug in our increased flow, we are at roughly, 29%. Now, that's with nobody in phase 2 hooked up, but just to kind of show you where we are compared to what we're allowed to pump out to the wicks. Major piece of maintenance, we had Trojan UV on site. What they did was they replaced the wiper seals and repaired the wiper cage on our UV reactor number 1. This has been a battle with them. The wiper seals are a wear item. I have argued that they are wearing prematurely due to warranty issues, so we've kind of come up with a compromise that we're buying the parts, they're coming out to replace them and fix the units. We believe we are having the same issue with the second reactor, so I'm working to schedule them to come back out and address that one. Other maintenance items we do mechanically, the garage door that has been damaged in septage has been repaired. It is not tied back into SCADA yet, so I'm currently still having the drivers back out, trying to get a solution where this won't happen again. The intended solution of having the sensors installed seems that it's going to be a bit more of an invasive process, costly process, because the actual door driver motor is a dumbed down version essentially to account for the explosion proof room. So that piece doesn't have anything to tie into. We would have to go through the whole electrical system. So I've come up with potential workarounds that will have the both doors opening and closing only if you actually hit the button. And then what we'll do, I think I would like to do, is that it'll be a button that you actually have to hold it to close it. So it's not you hit a switch and it comes down, you'll have to hold it closed since the sensors don't seem to be a viable solution currently. So that's just something we're kind of working through. Then the other thing I wanted to mention was you'll note that I didn't have results for a sample that was sent out December 23rd. For my TSS and my effluent. I did get those results after sending out the report, of course, and those are well within permit, 9.25 milligrams per liter. And on that note, Lynn had noted some higher permit numbers, but still well within range. So just kind of wanted to, Dan had actually asked a couple months ago about the process for winter. So just kind of wanted to touch on that briefly in that, in the winter months, basically, in layman's terms, the bugs don't like to work in the winter. They're just like us, right? It's cold, they don't want to work. So it's harder to get them to do the work. And then playing into the whole thing is our lower flows. So typically what you'd have is you'd have a lot of turnover in these tanks. You're getting higher temperature influent coming in, and you're getting turnover in the tanks. The way we're currently running with 45,000 gallons every 12 hours, we're not adding much. We're not adding much warmer water to very cold water. We're not taking much back out. So when that water gets cold, when we only add 45,000 gallons to it, it doesn't make much of a difference. So potentially in the future, hopefully it'll be a lot easier and a little better in terms of winter operations. But right now with the low flows, it is a little bit difficult. So that's why you see some higher numbers than you typically see. And we hope to bring those numbers right back down as soon as it gets a little warmer, if not sooner.
Not this week.
No.
No, this particular week has me nervous, I will be honest. But we will get through it. We're pretty well prepared. We're in much better shape than last year, and like I said, we have more flow, so it is better than last year in that sense. That was about all I had, unless there's any questions on the December report.
Any?
So I'm looking at page 14, and I really like the fact that you're putting in the revenue versus the expenses. I'm a financial guy, and that's what I gravitate to. In looking at page 14 and looking at sewer usage revenue, and this sort of gets at my 80% question and gets at, the issue of, getting us to being a self-funding organization. You can see that the numbers from last year basically doubled for usage, right? So we went from 55, 84, 67, 74 billed to 141, 151, which is great. I mean, that's why I was looking at that earlier chart, because I was trying to see whether the effluent had doubled during those periods, and I was having trouble trying to figure out, especially on a quarterly basis. But I am concerned when I look at that and I project it forward, right? It looks like the septage and the other two categories are pretty constant, right? And so we've done 300,000 in septage, and we had 600,000 for last year, so it looks like that's pretty stable. But it does look like, especially when you compare it with the revenues, right, that we're going to come in substantially below the numbers that we need. I mean, so last year, if this is on page 13 at the bottom for FY25, you can see we took in 957,000 and we spent $1.7 million, right? So we lost about $700,000. Right? And if you project out for 26, and if you just said it's going to be, 4 times or twice as much as we already have, that gets us to 600,000 there, and we're still going to have a significant loss or need to fund this with the stabilization fund, and I guess I'm thinking about this both from the standpoint of rates, whether the rates are too low for sewers, and with respect to whether we can get this other 20%, right, which would get us more revenue, or whether there's some kind of a plan here to get us to the point, and it might not be this year, it might be next year or the year after. Maybe we need phase 2 flow to be able to get to a point where we're fully funded. But I'd like to, and I don't know if this is you or this is more Rich, I'd like to get to the point where we understood what the evolution over time was going to look like to a point where we're break even.
You and I have the same goals, I mean, for sure. I will say that when we do the budget for a fiscal year, and when we determine how much of the stabilization fund we're going to use, we based it on projections of what we think that revenue is going to come in. So we have our projections of revenue, and then whatever we're short, we have our projections for the wastewater stabilization fund. So what I was saying earlier in my report is what we projected for this fiscal year, we have already exceeded in the revenue. Doesn't mean that we don't still rely on the stabilization fund, and we're going to need to rely on the stabilization fund for some time before we catch up with the operational cost. I don't know what phase that's going to be. I mean, I think I've always anticipated maybe in phase 3, we might be able to lessen our reliance on the wastewater stabilization fund to balance our operating budget. But it could be phase 4. Where we would be self-sufficient in terms of not really needing the stabilization fund to balance our operating budget. Now, going through the exercise of budgets this year, which I'll present to you next month, last year we needed $2.2 million to balance this budget from the stabilization fund. In fiscal year 27, next year, we're projecting only needing $1 million. So and that is because we're anticipating phase 2 flow to come on. We're anticipating phase 2 betterment revenue coming on. We're expecting phase 2 inspection fees to come on. So all those things are hitting our revenue projections, just like we did for this fiscal year. So if you think we're going to be short here, I'm telling you, we've already exceeded our revenue projections for this fiscal year. We've already met what we thought we were going to meet. So whether we fall a little short of previous years or not, we've conservatively budgeted accordingly.
Yes.
And we'll keep improving that, and each year, based on these actual numbers that we start to see. Because remember, we went from planning numbers, which, you know, they were accurate to a sense to actual numbers, real numbers. So we're starting to see the real numbers come in. So I think each iteration, we're going to be able to fine-tune this budget. But I know what you're saying. When are we going to be self-sufficient operating? That's my goal, is to figure that out and know when that is.
And I'm just looking at the operating expense. I'm not looking at capital at all. And if you add the
Not
capital load on top of this, I'm sure that, it
I'll tell you,
blows the whole
the
thing.
previous presentation excites me because, yeah, we do budget $315,000 for electricity. And we do know that they're doing a solar array at the wastewater treatment plant. So if we can offset that $315,000, that's fantastic, something that we should.
Yeah, I ask because I think, other towns that have sewer systems and that are ahead of us are using their short-term rental taxes for other things, right, than subsidizing their sewers. And I realize that we have to do that to get over the hump of the startup, but, I mean, I'd like to see us using those funds for economic development or for other things.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, the conversations that I understood that short-term rental tax, that subsidizes the stabilization fund, that intended use was discussed to help offset the 80% debt payment of taxation. I mean, that was the premise of it, but the understanding is that we were going to need it for all incidental reasons for sewer until this sewer system got off the ground. And right now, we're using it for operating, to help cover the operating. But I know there have been discussions about the 80% taxation helping offset that. Now, these are policy decisions that aren't going to happen here. They're going to happen at the select board level. But I can tell you, a lot of people are interested in that short-term rental. They wanted to see it go towards housing. They want to see it go towards economic development. They want to see other use. So the quicker we can get stabilized, the better. But at the same token, I don't think just jacking up the sewer rates just to fill that balance is going to be the right solution. I think there's the expectation that's going to take a little bit of connections to get there. Right now, we're at $8 per thousand is what we charge. Town of Harwich charges $3 per thousand, right around that ballpark. And the town of Provincetown in their peak season charges $16,000. So, I mean, right now we're smack dab in the middle, and I think we're looking at what those other rates look like and where we should be to appropriately, charge for the operation, not so much as to correct the deficiency per se.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add in terms of operating budget, you know, as we grow in terms of connections, this isn't gonna, you know, if we get double the connections, it's not gonna double our operating budget. So what you're seeing now is, you know, it may seem like a lot, but the equipment, whether it's 10 years old or brand new, we have to maintain it. So a lot of that isn't gonna increase significantly as we move forward. You know, some of it obviously capital upgrades and things like that will cause increases. But generally, you know, the day-to-day maintenance of things is gonna be the same throughout. So you're not gonna see a 200 more connections. That means we're doubling our operational budget. That's gonna stay, I don't wanna say steady.
No, I'm thinking you have relatively fixed costs, and as our volume goes up, you know, almost all of that's gonna fall to the bottom line in you know, business terms. So I mean, obviously, getting more flow is really important, but I worry that the subsequent phases are much smaller, you know, in terms of expected flow than the downtown was, right? Downtown has all the businesses, it has, you know, restaurants, it has people that are using much higher rates, and it has more than double the number of hookups. So I'm worried that the subsequent phases aren't gonna get there as fast as maybe we hope they.
And the costs are going to go up. And one thing that's on my radar, Tim, is that, you know, probably after phase 4, which the planning for phase 4 is started, but it looks like it's going to be 4 and 5. We're going to take the two and put them together. We're going to probably be looking at starting planning for the addition to the wastewater treatment plant. So when we start talking like this, always in my mind is we're going to have this bubble of expense down the road before things. We're not ready to stabilize the stabilization fund yet, but that would be, you know, another 8 years.
It'd take a little bit of time, but I think reviewing the rates, making some small adjustments, I think we're going to get there as soon as we can.
Get there.
I have one more thing to add. Talking about revenue reminded me. I had set a goal for my team. I wanted us to take in 6 million gallons during the calendar year of 2025, and the team accomplished that goal. So just wanted to say I'm proud of them. We got the 6 million. That's 600,000 in revenue. Now that's calendar year. I know you guys love fiscal years, but for me, I look at calendar years. So that's what I'm basing it off of. But our goal will be to hit 6 million for this current fiscal year as well. And hopefully we can keep doing that for as long as we can.
What do you do? Go out and beg people to empty their septic?
I'm trying to make it enticing for the haulers to come.
Okay.
You know, we have a bit of a trickier system than most septage offloads, but we try to keep it clean and an inviting place for them to come. I try to keep Gatorades out there for them in the summer.
Okay.
I'm willing to stay late whenever they, you know, if they're running late. You know, our hours are 7 to 3, but if they tell me they're going to be there at 3:15, I stay whatever they need to try and bring all that revenue in, all that. For me, it's more, you know, I look at it, I present it to you guys as revenue. For me, it's flow for my bugs so that I can keep the process running. So it's twofold, bringing them in and letting them come late.
Good customer service.
Yeah. So that's really what we do to try and entice them to come here as much as possible.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions? I'm going to, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to circle back because John Nelson is here, so maybe he could quickly answer the question that came up earlier. John, can you, Tim has a question. Delighted that you came back in the room.
Yeah. So the question was in the town report that Sue put together, she said we're at 81% hookup for phase 1. And I said that after 2.5 years, that doesn't seem very good. And I think there was some debate over whether these were vacant lots or whether they were, you know, so I'm curious as to, you know,
there's
people
many
who really-
categories. There are the vacant lots, there's people on deferrals, there's people in the installation phase that have just simply not connected. You know, they have a full application package in.
Right, so I put the people that have made an application but haven't hooked up yet, they're guilty from my perspective, right? They had 2.5 years, they haven't hooked up yet.
It's been almost 3
But-
years since the original order letter went out. There's
Right,
probably
right.
40-plus people that haven't connected.
Right,
so-
and so my question is, how many real, what percentage of legitimate people who need to be hooked up are not hooked up? I mean, if there's 15% that are vacant lots that will never get hooked up, and so we're only 4% off, then I'm, maybe not so crazed. If we truly have 19% of the population after 3 years that haven't hooked up, I'm crazed. It's like, what the heck is going on?
I think we're probably upwards of 10% that are an issue. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a lot of people not to be hooked up after this length.
Well, it is. I mean, and then you had a 1-year connection period that extended. You had, I mean, it's been
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
3 years since the original order went out, and we still have people not connecting. So I think people get the idea of like Chatham, just connect when you connect. So there's going to be a handful that just simply aren't connecting.
Yeah, and so the question is, are we bringing the hammer down on those people?
That's a Board of Health. They handle the fines and all that stuff.
So I
You
should
don't
go.
want to leave it to me. You'll
Okay,
have
so I should
a
go
bunch
to a Board of
angry
Health meeting and
Yeah,
rant
that's-
if I have a rant.
I will be working, we're trying to get the Phase 2 letter and stuff together, but that's something that I just talked with Meredith this morning about, is trying to find who's left on Phase 1 that either got an extension, and, a lot of those extensions may have ran out December 31st. So to fine tune exactly, aside from the people that's land only,
That's yours.
or have a legitimate
My gosh.
like Title V deferral or something like that, who's left out there. There's a good portion, probably a dozen or so, that have applications approved that just, they're not connecting it for whatever reason. So we got to kind of get that. So that's where the between 10 and 20% gets muddied.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Moving on, January drought update, Sue?
All right, you have in your packet the latest mass drought status as of January 12th. I just want to, we're still a level 2, but I do want to point out that Nantucket County is now at a level 3. Martha's Vineyard's at a level 0, but, and then I want to show you the graph, depth to groundwater, and this 3304 is where we are now in January. We are an all-time low, starting out January. So we could be joining Nantucket in March at a level 3, which is no watering.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, thank you. Going to old business topics. Does anyone have anything to report? Water rates?
So Mary, Sue, and I are going to get together and start playing around with a spreadsheet to see what kinds of differentiated water rates we might want to recommend. And I think we'll look at towns around, like Chatham and P-Town, and see if we can model on things like that. I know that Rich has a lot of experience from his time up in P-Town and in implementing seasonal rates, and I think we'd probably also look to him for some advice and guidance and
Technical support.
tech support, yeah.
Perfect, great, thank you. Water Commissioner matters for 2026. This is actually going to be an agenda item for next month, but Kevin Mahoney is going to give you a brief overview and food for thought.
No, it was just simply a thought that I had passed along to Ginny, that would it be worthwhile at the beginning of any given year, if this group the board, Sue, Rich, Todd, think about what other matters are going to be important that we need to square off against as the year rolls along, and put together an outline of those at the beginning of a year so that that group of people that I mentioned could contemplate what's ahead, as opposed to, getting an agenda, days before a meeting and trying to get up to speed on some of the topics that are going to be worked through at the following week's meeting. And so then that list would be developed from input from everybody. And some things might be more important to others, and there may be individuals that think they have some expertise or specialty around some of the matters that we're going to have to work through, and they may, commit to spending, more time than others in between meetings, getting smart on those matters, et cetera, et cetera. So it was simply a thought, as we enter a year, should we work on coming up with a master outline of the important matters ahead of us for the next 12 months. That was it. And so that, Sue said at some point in years past, they had a similar list called an action item list. And so she distributed a draft of that or a copy of that from some time in the past. And that if people could just think about this, and for the February meeting, each person should say, here's what I think are the important matters that we're going to have to work through. And those could be anything from, a different methodology for the betterments, or, a different approach to setting rates,
Land management.
land management, and so I just think it would be a good topic to spend some time on as a group at the next meeting. And then we all have some visibility towards what's ahead of us for 12 months, and we can all choose as to how we want to get smart on particular topics, sooner rather than later.
So this is a draft, essentially?
It's,
It's not really a draft.
I took an old one and I updated it slightly, but the idea is that you all take it home and
Yeah,
review
yeah.
it and add to it. And at the next meeting, we will create a new
Build it out.
action item list that we will use going forward.
Would it have an assumed lead, or would it, should?
I would like to see a lead.
Where appropriate, unless it's obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And it's, I think one of the things I liked was that Kevin suggested that it's also a get-to-know-you kind of exercise, because some of you have expertise in areas that I'm not aware of. It's like, I know Tim's the finance guy, and I know Mary likes to write, and, Lynn's the auditor, and but what are your interests and
Yeah, yeah.
where do you want to work? So we started doing some of this with the working groups, but expand.
Well, there may have been things that have bothered some of us in the past that we want to, put some visibility to and improve upon. I think we would all think that the appeals process that we went through was a little bit sticky at time, to use a soft word. And so going forward, what can we do for that appeals process to be
Before we need it again. Right.
Yeah,
for that appeals process to be smoother, more friendly, more effective, both for us and for the people who get in front of us. So that's something I would say, I'd like to see us work through in the near term, just as an example, but anyways.
because it is certainly something that's going to come up.
I think it's also, I think it's also easier for us as a group, as a team, to be thinking about what it is we want to achieve over the next year. To say, we want to be able to see the following things happen. I think it also gives us greater ability to reach out to other boards, commissions, staff members to say, we want to look at these following things. How do we do this? How do we make ourselves more effective? So I wholeheartedly agree. And the one, of course, that's not on here is the drought communications plan.
No, but it is,
Put it on my, I wrote
On
it
yours,
down.
that's right. But no, I think, and it also, I think, allows us to, I think it allows us to sort of coalesce around a series of things, each of which have, is it a process issue? Is it a topic? Is it a subject that we have to understand more about? So I see it as a great idea.
so it can be a one-day task or a
Yep.
4-month task or whatever. But anyway, that's great. Are there anything to report on the water department?
Mark has his hand up.
Mark, sorry, Mark.
Hallelujah.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
He's not putting his
Hallelujah.
paw up, he's just waving his arm, so.
It's just saying, great, good idea, I think.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Understood. I got it. It took me a minute. It's late in the day. Anything to report on the reporting?
So Lynn and I and Rich got together just to begin the conversations around what would be most valuable. And I think we got to the point of sort of saying, I think the conversations you were having that we're going to do about the budget, I think will be really helpful, because I think after that, we can then figure out what are the things that we need to hear on a regular basis that will be most helpful. So I think Lynn and I are sort of set, and I think this is probably one of these task lists, or task list, or should be on the task list, which is for all of us to say, that was great. I mean, to the point where you were making, is this the way you want the chart to be done? I think we need to sort of take it upon ourselves to be more proactive in, that will be helpful or that won't. So I think Lynn and I will try to come up with a series of sort of questions for all of us to look at, to decide, what is it that would be most helpful, but we can do that probably after you do your budget stuff, and then we'll have a sense of, what do we feel like we'd like to know? And I think we should have that as a conversation as part of this task group, of being able to say there are things that we want to feel more informed about, and how do we do that?
I'm going to just circle back for 1 second. My thought was that anything that's on this old business
Yes.
would go on an action list, because this has sort of been my tickle file to remind me that things are in process. Mary, do you want to do a quick update on drought outreach? 'Cause
Can I just
we're-
add
Yep.
one thing? Sorry. So, Rich, when you talk to us about budget matters in one of our upcoming meetings, I don't know if others would feel the same or not, or maybe I'm just not understanding it, but at some point I tried to go through the town budget, right, in its entirety, right, and kind of figure out where or how everything water impacts that town budget, because there's a variety of line items in the budget that show up, and, something that's water-related described, a little bit differently in one page versus another. And I don't know whether, I would just like to understand how, all the activities that we're responsible for overseeing play into and impact the broader town budget. I know, we can just look at these revenues and expenses, but there's in your report, but maybe I'm not explaining myself properly, but I think when you walk us through some of these budget topics, how it all fits into the total town budget would be of interest to me.
We can certainly walk you through that. I think the whole point of the budget process is to really generate these discussions, these, understandings and misunderstandings, or things that are not known. But I'll certainly take that into as a suggestion as I plan out how I want to present the budget
Okay.
next year, because,
Yeah, thank
or
you.
next month. Just because I think you do need to know what an indirect cost is, who that impacts. I think you need to understand what a special purpose fund, which is what the water system is under, versus an enterprise fund, which is what the sewer system. And so I think we can talk through that, and then hopefully generate more of a discussion of where you're unclear, clear, and Might
Perfect.
not
Yeah,
solve it
thank
all in one meeting, but at least we'll have a good direction for how to do it for the next meeting and kind of keep building on that. Because I think we're at a good point to really make some transparent discussions on the budget and how the budget process looks like. We got good understanding of the debt right now. And that took a little bit to get clear. So we've got a good understanding of the debt. We got good understanding of with the issuance of short-term bans, who gets charged that, the enterprise fund. So we can talk through it, and then from there we'll take the discussion. But please, we really need your input. So a little to what Mary's saying, if there's something in these reports that are not clear to you, you want some more clarifications, well, let's talk about it. We might not have the answer at that meeting, but the next meeting we'll be able to bring something forward to you. So should be a good
That'd
discussion.
be great. I think one of the things that I need to keep in mind is that we're a very, not in years young, but we're a very young commission. Mark's been on for a while, but, we're all pretty new to this. So we're still finding our way and figuring out what questions we have.
Definitely switch from planning to operating.
Yes.
So it's more of an operation right now, although there's still some planning moving forward, but we're operating. And so I think have lots to talk about.
Yeah, and just, sorry to overdo it, but just maybe give you a better sense where I was coming from, is I went to our budget, right, our annual budget that's published, and actually highlighted every line item that I thought was water-related, and many of those line items, it seemed like it was water-related, but I couldn't really figure out where it all ties into a lot of the things that we oversee, whether it be rates or betterment revenue, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I'm repeating myself, I know a little bit, but just to get a sense as to where we fit in to the overall budget, and in particular line items in that budget, and how things that we can do could maybe have a more positive impact than what's planned for, would be worthwhile.
I think with the institutional knowledge of Sue, going through many of the budget process, we'll be able to answer some
okay.
of those questions. And there's going to be some that we won't, but we can certainly follow up. I can see why you would be confused, just because some of the, especially with the special purpose fund, it does have direct implications into the general fund's budget. And it's tied into budgetary transfers for the general fund that show up in the budget process. It shows up at town meetings. And I think we could probably clarify some of those for you, walk you through it. But anything that we're unsure of, we can certainly get you an answer. So you could send us what you highlighted, and we could be prepared to answer more if you'd like. But we'll do our best to answer all your questions.
Well,
Maybe I'll just, the little workbook that I had, and did this highlighting, and have my questions next to, maybe I'll just stop by and see Sue one of these days and say, what is this, and what is that, and how does this relate to that? And that would be in advance of that meeting, just in case it helps fine tune whatever you're gonna present.
Well, I would also caution that you look at the fiscal '27 budget, which is part of the select board packet for tonight's meeting, so it's online. And also, there's a select board meeting, which is the first presentation of the fiscal '27 budget. And then next Wednesday, there's a budget workshop with the select board at 3 o'clock. And then the 4th, there's also a budget workshop, which will, and I'm not sure how those two things are gonna work out. But you can see the new, and the water budget is in a section all by itself in the actual budget, which is the same as in the warrant from last May. The water budget is all not by itself, it's with its friends, but it's all the water stuff is there, labeled as the water budget, and the capital outlay is right there as well. So you don't have to go looking for it. The more complicated one is the sewer enterprise fund, but it was presented in a separate warrant article, and you can find that as well in the warrant from last year. But we'll be gentle when we get to it.
Great. So Mary, could you just bring us up to date on what's happening there, and we'll get out before we get yelled at?
Yes, so Sue and I had a good meeting with Amanda to talk about what we can do for a total communications package around all things drought, and water and fertilizer and nitrogen and about 17 other things we decided to add to it. Because there are a number, and fortunately, we can fold this initiative into a project that she's working on called the Community That Cares Collaboration, which is groups of folks who all have to do with all the environmental teams. And we are putting together a grant to become what is it called? An I've forgotten. Ocean-friendly community, which is, we're looking to get a grant to make this all be a one total town package where businesses are involved with doing things which will help with environmental stuff, such as, what plastics you're using or not using in your restaurants, what are you doing in your hotels, what are individual people doing, what are you growing, how are you doing your the pollinator pathways, and there are all those things that we have been talking about. How can we put it into this one package and get a grant to get some funding to be able to make that happen? The thing that all of that program relies upon is public information, and they need to be coming up with a structure by which the town and related partners do this communications plan, and we can be the guinea pig or the template developer for how does the town communicate on these kinds of issues. So I think we've got Amanda's support to put this together. We may have some funding to do an intern to help Amanda do this. So I think we've got some real possibilities. And certainly with, it requires doing the whole stakeholder analysis of who we need to influence, what are the topics that we're really going to influence people on, and how are we going to, and then what are we really going to do? So we've got a big project ahead of us, but I think we've got the right support both internally and from some partners, and hopefully we can get some staff support to make it happen, because it won't happen without that kind of staff support.
I guess my only concern about that is the timing. And with what Sue has talked about with here comes March and heading into a drought, what we really probably want people to do is not to tell them to turn off the water, but don't turn it on. And will we be able to get anything going in time to communicate to people ahead of the season as opposed to waiting for a bigger project? I guess that would be my concern.
I don't think I think we have to manage our timeline against
Okay, a
everything
bigger
else.
effort.
But I think there is nothing preventing us from figuring out what are those immediate messages that need to be done. And so we can certainly be thinking about how we time it to be able to be sure we can deal with folks before they get started for the summer.
Yeah, so long-term, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, anything else, commissioners? All right, could I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
By Tim Cunahan.
By Dan Mady.
Mary Wright.
Jenny Farber?
Kevin Mahoney?
Aye, Tim Brady.
Mark Briscoe.
Mark Berg, aye.